On the eve of our anniversary, my husband Nathaniel slapped me, in front of his entire company, for defending his secretary. What he didn't know was that Sophie wasn't a secretary at all. She was Serena, his so-called white moonlight, who had faked her death, taken millions and returned with a new face. So I exposed her at a gala, pregnant with twins, and filed for divorce. The Hayes family disowned him, society mocked him, and I walked away with everything. He gave me betrayal. I gave him ruin. The ring wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was history wrapped in diamonds, the Hayes family's heirloom, passed down from generation to generation, a symbol of loyalty and legacy. And yet, there it was, glittering on the slender finger of Sophie Lynn, a secretary barely out of college, as she posed on a yacht for all the world to see. Her social media post had gone viral within hours. Maisa, wow, tonight's Hayesio is really so handsome. I'm so happy. This ring is really nice too. It seems that as a beast of burden in the new era, one must work diligently and conscientiously. Her smug words burned into my vision like acid. And in every photo the ring shone mockingly. My ring, the ring entrusted to the Hayes family by my ancestors, now desecrated as a trinket for an ambitious girl to show off. I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles whitened. My chest felt hollow, as though someone had carved out my heart and left me with a gaping wound. And the worst part? My husband, Nathaniel Hayes, had allowed it. When he walked into the mansion that evening, he was still in his tailored gray suit, tie loosened, looking every bit the confidential everyone adored. But his expression soured the instant he saw my face. "Amelia," he said with an exasperated sigh, tossing his keys onto the marble counter. "Not tonight. I've had a long day. Not tonight." My voice dripped with venom as I threw the phone onto the glass table between us. Sophie's post blared in high definition, the ring catching the golden sunset like it was mocking me. "Do you have any idea what this is?" He glanced at it, brows furrowing slightly. But instead of panic or regret, he shrugged. "It's just a ring," Nathaniel said flatly. "If I gave it, I gave it. What's your problem?" My mouth fell open. "Just a ring? Nathaniel, that heirloom has been in your family for over a century. It symbolizes loyalty, commitment, everything your ancestors stood for." "Amelia," he said sharply, his voice rising. "Stop being dramatic. It's a piece of metal and stone. Sophie has worked hard for me. She deserved a gift." I laughed then, a cold, bitter sound that echoed in the vast living room. "A gift? Oh, so now we hand out legacies as party favors? Should I give away my family's estates to my stylist too, since she makes me look good?" His jaw tightened. "Don't twist my words." "Oh, I'm not twisting anything," I snapped, stepping closer until I was staring straight into those storm-gray eyes of his. "You gave away what wasn't yours to give. And you did it to humiliate me. For years I had tolerated the cracks in our marriage. Ours wasn't built on fairy tales or whirlwind romance. It was duty, a merger of two powerful families. My Carters were stronger, wealthier, but the Hayes name carried its weight in legacy. Nathaniel had been charming in the beginning, even attentive. But as time passed, I had watched him grow restless, his gaze wandering, his ego inflating. I had given him space, I had looked the other way. But this, giving away the Hayes family heirloom to a secretary who now flaunted it to the entire world? That was beyond betrayal. That was war. "You want to see what just a ring means to me?" I whispered, pulling my phone from the counter. My thumb hovered over the livestream button. "Amelia," Nathaniel warned, his tone darkening. "Don't you dare." But it was too late. With one click I went live. The camera captured me stepping outside to the vast courtyard, where the moonlight reflected against chrome and steel. Parked beneath the villa lights was Nathaniel's most prized possession. A limited edition, one-of-a-kind supercar, worth more than most people would earn in their lifetimes. The comments flooded in instantly. "Oh my God, isn't that the Hayes supercar? What's Mrs. Hayes doing with that excavator? Is this real?" Nathaniel's voice roared behind me. "Amelia, stop this madness right now. Do you even know how much that car is worth?" I turned to him, still streaming, my lips curving into a slow, dangerous smile. "Oh, I know. But then again, it's just a car, isn't it? If you can give away my family's ring so easily, why can't I play with one of your toys?" His face drained of color. "You wouldn't." "Oh, I would." I raised my hand grandly. The excavator's massive bucket lowered, its steel teeth gleaming under the lights. And then crash. The shriek of metal shattering filled the night air as the front of his beloved car caved in. Glass exploded, sparks flew, and the livestream chat went wild. Holy, she actually did it. Mrs. Hayes is savage. That's what happens when you disrespect the wife. Nathaniel's rage was volcanic. Amelia, do you even know what you've done? That car is irreplaceable. Exactly. I stepped closer, shoving the phone into his face so the entire audience could see his fury. Just like the ring you gave away. Irreplaceable. Priceless. And you tossed it aside like it meant nothing. The excavator crushed again, flattening the hood like tinfoil. The sound was grotesquely satisfying, every crunch of steel echoing my fury. Nathaniel lunged for my phone, but I danced out of reach, keeping the camera on him. Do you see this man? I told the audience, my voice calm, icy. This is Nathaniel Hayes, who gave his family's heirloom ring to a secretary. This is the value he places on loyalty. His hands curled into fists, his composure cracking as thousands watched. For once, the mask of the flawless So slipped, revealing the furious, cornered man beneath. End it, he hissed. I tilted my head, smirking. Why? You started this, Nathaniel. I'm just showing the world what boundaries really mean. The excavator's bucket slammed down one final time, reducing the car into an unrecognizable heap of twisted steel. The livestream chat exploded. And then I ended it. The silence after the chaos was deafening. Nathaniel stood rooted to the spot, his jaw clenched, his body shaking with barely restrained fury. Amelia, he said finally, his voice low and dangerous. Do you even know what line you've crossed? I met his glare head-on. Yes. The same line you crossed when you gave away that ring. Consider us even. For a moment I thought he might strike me. But instead he turned sharply, storming into the house, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. I remained outside, chest heaving, staring at the wreckage of his precious car. The smell of oil and twisted metal lingered in the air, acrid and final. A bitter satisfaction coursed through me. For the first time in years I had drawn the line. And Nathaniel had no choice but to see it. But deep down I knew this was only the beginning. The secretary, Sophie Lynn, hadn't just stolen a ring, she had stolen Nathaniel's attention, his loyalty, his respect. And if Nathaniel thought I would quietly fade into the background while she flaunted my humiliation to the world, he was gravely mistaken. Later that night as I sat in my study, the phone buzzed with message after message. Screenshots of Sophie's smug posts, photos from the yacht, gossip articles spreading like wildfire. And one message from my best friend Clara. Goddess, you've set the internet on fire. But Amelia, are you ready for what comes next? Because this war is only getting started. I stared at the screen, then at the crumpled photo album lying on my desk. The one that held Nathaniel's so-called white moonlight, his lost love. My lips curved into a dangerous smile. Oh, Clara, I whispered to myself. I'm more than ready. Because I wasn't just Amelia Carter, the wife he could discard at will. I was Amelia Carter, the woman who would remind Nathaniel Hayes and his little secretary that loyalty once betrayed was never forgiven. And this was only part one. The morning after the livestream incident, the world was buzzing. News blogs and gossip forums had caught wind of the Mrs. Hayes excavator show, as they had branded it, complete with hashtags and memes. Some applauded me. Others painted me as unstable, the scorned wife lashing out. Nathaniel left early as usual, slamming the door behind him, his fury radiating like an aura that clung to the walls long after he was gone. He hadn't spoken a word to me since the destruction of his car, but he didn't need to. His silence was louder than shouting, more cutting than insults. I sat at the dining table in my silk robe, staring at the untouched breakfast. The mansion felt cavernous, empty. My reflection in the polished silver teapot was pale, tired, yet my eyes glimmered with something sharper than grief, resolve. I remembered the day of our wedding. The Hayes family had been faltering, their old wealth bleeding into obscurity. My family, the Carters, were not only wealthy but powerful. My grandfather had once been saved by Nathaniel's late father, and loyalty was a Carter value written into our bones. So when Nathaniel's mother proposed the union, my family didn't hesitate. It wasn't romance, not then. It was obligation. But I wasn't naive. I knew Nathaniel was handsome. his dark hair always perfectly styled, his gray eyes sharp, his posture exuding authority. He had the kind of presence that made women lean closer and men stand taller. I had told myself then, this will work. Affection can grow. Love can come later. And for a time it seemed like it might. Nathaniel was charming in public, attentive enough in private. He didn't shower me with flowers or poetry, but he gave me respect, partnership, and stability. That had been enough. Until Sophie Lynn appeared. I noticed it in small ways first. Dinner reservations mysteriously cancelled. Business trips that stretched longer than usual. Evenings where he would walk through the door past midnight, the scent of perfume lingering faintly on his suit. "Nathaniel," I had asked him once, my tone deliberately casual, "will you be home for dinner tonight?" He had glanced up from his phone, his voice flat. "I have something to do. Eat by yourself." That had been the end of it. No apology. No explanation. Just dismissal. I had told myself not to care. After all, ours wasn't a love marriage. But that didn't stop the ache from blooming in my chest every time he brushed me off. It was Clara who finally ripped away the last veil. My phone buzzed one afternoon as I sat in the study. A message from her popped up, followed by a photo. When I opened it, the breath caught in my throat. Nathaniel stood on the deck of a private yacht, the sea breeze ruffling his hair. And clinging to his arm, radiant in a designer dress, was Sophie Lynn. The caption Clara added was simple. "He doesn't even hide it anymore." My hands shook as I zoomed in. Nathaniel was smiling, not his polite business smile but a softer one. His hand rested protectively on Sophie's waist. The intimacy was unmistakable. In another shot, Sophie leaned against him, holding her phone up as they made a heart gesture together. My stomach twisted. Nathaniel had never taken casual photos with me. Not once. I scrolled further and found Sophie's social media post. She wasn't subtle. "Mr. Hayes is so gentle," she had written, her tone coy. "How lucky I am to work for such a CEO." Comments poured in beneath it. "Gentle? He looks smitten. That's Mrs. Hayes' ring, isn't it? Are they together?" And then the final blow. Sophie's reply to a follower who asked if she was Nathaniel's wife. "Oh dear, everyone misunderstood. I'm not Mrs. Hayes. Not now," winking face. "Not now." The implication was clear. Not now but later. My pulse thundered in my ears. I almost laughed. I had avoided her, ignored her petty provocations, chosen to carry myself with dignity. And yet Sophie Lynn had the audacity to flaunt herself on a yacht, on his arm for the world to see. Very well then. She wanted war, I would show her what true warfare looked like. Still, as I sat there staring at those images, doubt wormed its way into my heart. Had I been wrong from the beginning? Was our marriage nothing more than a facade, an illusion of stability destined to crumble? Had I mistaken Nathaniel's occasional kindness for love, when in truth he had never truly cared? That night when Nathaniel returned home, I didn't confront him. He entered late, his tie askew, his face tired. I stood at the top of the staircase, watching silently as he tossed his jacket aside and loosened his cuffs. He didn't even notice me. He walked straight past, up the stairs into his study. The door closed. And I realized then, I had already lost him. Perhaps I had never had him at all. But that didn't mean I would allow him, or Sophie Lynn, to turn me into a laughingstock. Seeds of war. I forwarded the photos to a hidden folder in my phone, labeling it proof. Clara called me soon after, her voice sharp with fury. "Amelia, you can't let them walk over you like this. The internet is buzzing. People are asking if Nathaniel's about to replace you." "Replace me?" I murmured, my eyes narrowing as I stared at Sophie's smug smile frozen in pixels. "Let them think it. Let them talk. But when I strike Clara, it won't be with words. It will be with proof. With humiliation. And I'll make sure they both regret ever underestimating me." Clara was silent for a moment before whispering, "You're planning something, aren't you?" "Yes." I leaned back in my chair, my lips curving. "And when the time comes, everyone will see exactly who Sophie Lynn really is." I placed my phone down and walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside. The city skyline glowed in the distance, glittering with promise. Nathaniel thought he was untouchable, Sophie thought she had won, and the world thought I was merely the scorned wife. But they were wrong. I wasn't broken. I wasn't finished. I was only just getting started. And the game was about to change. The house was eerily quiet that night, the kind of silence that pressed against my ears like cotton. Nathaniel had gone out again. No explanation, no message. My reflection in the grand hallway mirror looked colder than I remembered. Sharp cheekbones, lips pressed into a tight line, eyes gleaming with restrained fury. But something in me whispered that this wasn't just infidelity. Nathaniel wasn't just careless, he was obsessed. And I needed to know why. It started in his study. Nathaniel never locked the door. Maybe he assumed I wouldn't dare intrude, or maybe he simply thought me too blind to notice anything. But that night, after I heard the garage door slam shut, I pushed the door open and stepped into his sanctuary. The study smelled faintly of leather and cedar, lined with bookshelves stacked with law journals and financial records. His desk was immaculate, papers stacked in perfect order. But it was the bottom drawer that caught my eye, slightly ajar as though someone had pulled it open in haste. I knelt and slid it open further. Inside lay a small worn book. Its leather cover was frayed, its pages yellowed with time. A yearbook. I lifted it with trembling hands, brushing off the dust. When I opened the first page, a photograph slipped out, falling to the carpet. I froze. The girl in the picture was smiling shyly, her dark hair swept back, her hand slipped into the arm of a young, carefree Nathaniel. She was stunning. Not in a glamorous way, but in that kind of unforgettable, gentle beauty that stayed in your mind long after you looked away. And on the back of the photograph, in Nathaniel's handwriting, Serena. My forever. My breath hitched. Serena Blackwell. The name wasn't unfamiliar. Years ago, gossip had whispered about Nathaniel's first love. The story went that she had died in a car accident just before graduation, protecting him when a drunk driver struck. A tragic ending to a perfect love story. But looking at the pristine condition of the photo, the way it had been tucked carefully away, not a crease in sight, I realized something chilling. Nathaniel hadn't moved on. Not really. He had married me, lived with me, but a part of him had remained trapped in that past. I lifted the photo closer to the light, studying Serena's features. And then it hit me. The resemblance was undeniable. Her delicate jawline, the curve of her lips, even the tilt of her eyes, it was all there. Softer, younger, but the same essence. Sophie Lynn. I staggered back, clutching the photo. My chest tightened as realization tore through me. Sophie wasn't just some secretary with ambition. She wasn't just another mistress. She was Serena's shadow. A replacement. Nathaniel hadn't fallen for Sophie. He had fallen for Serena's ghost, dressed in a new body. I laughed, a sharp, hollow sound that filled the room. So that's what this is, I whispered. Not love. Not lust. Just unfinished business. The confrontation. Nathaniel returned home near midnight, smelling faintly of whiskey and salt air. I waited for him in the study, the yearbook and photos spread neatly across the desk. The moment he walked in and saw them, his face drained of color. "Amelia," he said slowly, his voice tight, "where did you get that?" I held the photo between two fingers, letting it dangle precariously. "This." My tone was mocking. "Your little shrine to the past? Hidden in a drawer like some sacred relic." He lunged forward, but I pulled back, holding it over the fireplace. "Touch me and this burns." "Amelia." His voice cracked with something I had never heard from him before. Panic. Real panic. His composure, his CO mask, it all shattered in an instant. "You still love her, don't you?" I asked quietly. "All these years, through our marriage, through every lie, you've been comparing me to a ghost." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." I waved the photo slowly, letting the firelight flicker against its edges. "You married me out of obligation, but your heart? It was buried with Serena. And now, lucky you, someone shows up who looks just like her. How convenient." His hands clenched. "Don't you dare, Amelia. Don't you dare destroy that." I smiled, cold and sharp. "Why not? It's just a photo. If you can give away heirlooms, I can burn memories." For the first time since I'd known him, Nathaniel looked desperate. His gray eyes, usually filled with arrogance, now glistened with pleading. "Amelia, please. Put it down. We can talk." But in that moment, everything was clear to me. Sophie wasn't a rival. She was a vessel for his regret, a stand-in for the girl he couldn't save. Me. I had never been anything more than the wife he settled for. I lowered the photo not into the fire but back onto the desk. Relax, Nathaniel. I won't destroy your precious memory. But make no mistake, I see you now. I see her in Sophie. And I promise you this, I won't let you replace me with a ghost. His shoulders sagged with relief, but I didn't miss the guilt etched into his features. Without another word, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I stood alone, staring at Serena's smile. My chest burned not with heartbreak but with something far more dangerous. Resolve. If Sophie thought she could waltz into my life as Serena's shadow and take my place, she was gravely mistaken. That night as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while Nathaniel tossed restlessly beside me, I whispered into the dark. Serena Blackwell may have been your first love, Nathaniel. But Sophie Lynn? She'll be your downfall. I closed my eyes, my mind already spinning with threads of strategy. This wasn't about jealousy anymore. This was about power. About reputation. About reminding Nathaniel and his darling ghost that I was not a woman to be discarded. And when the time came, I would tear the mask off Sophie Lynn's face in front of everyone. Let Nathaniel see the truth. Let him drown in regret. The next morning, as sunlight filtered into the bedroom, Nathaniel was already gone. I rose slowly, crossed to the vanity and studied my reflection. For years I had been Amelia Carter, the dutiful wife, the loyal partner, the silent sufferer. But not anymore. Now I would be something else. Something sharper. And Sophie Lynn, Serena's ghost, would learn that stealing what was mine came with a price. The invitation arrived in a cream envelope embossed with gold lettering, the kind only old money families still used. Hayes and Associates Annual Gala, hosted on the Starfire yacht. I smiled as I read the details. How fitting. Another party on the water. Another chance for Sophie Lynn to parade herself in front of the elite as though she were already Mrs. Hayes. But this time I would be there. And this time the stage would belong to me. I chose my armor carefully. A black silk gown that hugged every curve, the fabric shimmering with a liquid sheen under the light. My hair swept into a sleek chignon, diamonds at my ears, not gaudy but commanding. The look of a woman who was not to be trifled with. Clara, my ever-loyal friend, lounged on the settee in my dressing room, watching as the final touches were applied. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" she asked, her voice low but steady. I met her gaze in the mirror. Sophie thinks she's clever. Nathaniel thinks he's untouchable. Tonight I'll remind them both who I am. Clara smirked. I wouldn't miss this for the world. The Starfire yacht glittered under the moonlight, a floating palace alive with music and laughter. Guests in designer gowns and tuxedos sipped champagne, their conversations a mixture of business deals and idle gossip. Nathaniel stood near the entrance, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit. And beside him, glowing under the yacht's chandeliers, was Sophie Lynn. She wore a pale blue dress, her hand clinging to Nathaniel's arm as though she had earned the right. The crowd buzzed at my arrival. Heads turned, whispers followed. "Mrs. Hayes is here. After what happened with the car? This will be interesting." I descended the gangway with deliberate grace, every step a statement. My eyes locked on Sophie's, and I saw the flicker of unease she tried to hide behind her smile. Good. Let her tremble. The evening unfolded smoothly at first. Dinner, polite conversations, laughter that felt rehearsed. Nathaniel avoided my gaze, focusing entirely on Sophie, which only fueled the whispers around us. It was during the after-dinner entertainment, when guests gathered near the deck, that I struck. The host, a jovial old man with too much champagne in his hand, teased Sophie about her good luck charm, the Hayes family ring glinting on her finger. "What a beautiful heirloom," he said loudly enough for all to hear. "I thought that was meant for Mrs. Hayes?" The crowd chuckled. Sophie flushed, stammering something about loyalty and dedication. I stepped forward, my voice clear and sharp. "Oh, it was meant for me. But my husband seems to think loyalty is interchangeable." Gasps rippled through the crowd. All eyes turned to Nathaniel, then Sophie. The humiliation. Sophie tried to laugh it off, but I wasn't finished. "Tell me, Sophie," I continued smoothly, "since you've been so eager to flaunt the ring, why not show us how much it means to you? Perhaps a little demonstration?" Her eyes widened. I don't know what you mean." I lifted a delicate brow. "Oh, come now. You must have some talent to deserve such a gift. Surely you won't disappoint the guests?" A dance, perhaps. The crowd murmured with interest, champagne glasses lifted in anticipation. Nathaniel stiffened. Amelia, that's enough. I ignored him, tilting my head. Unless, of course, the ring was given without merit. And if that's the case, well, I let my gaze linger on the guests. Then it seems the Hayes family heirloom has been cheapened, doesn't it? Whispers grew louder. The pressure mounted. Sophie, pale and trembling, finally nodded. Of course. I'd be happy to. The music shifted, violins swelling as Sophie stepped into the center of the deck. She moved awkwardly, her steps clumsy, her nerves laid bare. The crowd watched with thinly veiled amusement. I sipped my champagne, savoring every stumble, every forced smile. Nathaniel's jaw was clenched so tightly I thought his teeth might crack. By the time the music ended, Sophie's face was crimson, her dress slightly askew, her pride in tatters. The polite applause was laced with mockery. "Bravo," I said coolly, setting my glass down. "Truly worthy of a Hayes heirloom." The laughter that followed wasn't kind. The party continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Sophie lingered in the shadows, humiliated, while the other women whispered behind their fans. Nathaniel excused himself early, his face stormy, Sophie scurrying after him like a wounded bird. I remained until the end, radiant, untouchable. Every gaze that followed me was filled with new respect, or fear. When I returned to the mansion later that night, Nathaniel was waiting. He stood in the foyer, his tie loosened, his hands shoved into his pockets. His expression was thunderous. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. I set my clutch on the console and met his glare without flinching. "That was me teaching boundaries. You humiliated Sophie in front of everyone." I laughed coldly. "Humiliated?" He flaunted my ring, "Nathaniel. She strutted on your arm as though she already wore my title. You think I'll sit quietly while she makes a fool of me?" His fists clenched. "You've gone too far." I stepped closer, lowering my voice until it was a blade. "No, Nathaniel. You went too far the day you gave away that ring. Don't you dare talk to me about limits when you crossed them first." He opened his mouth, then shut it again, his fury rendered useless against the truth. I left him standing there, trembling with rage while I ascended the stairs. My heels clicked against the marble, each step a victory. Alone in my room, I slipped off the diamond earrings and studied myself in the mirror. My reflection didn't look broken. It didn't look humiliated. It looked powerful. Sophie Lynn had thought she could rise by wearing a stolen ring. Nathaniel had thought he could indulge his obsession without consequence. But tonight I reminded them both. I was not a woman to be replaced. And this was only the beginning. The Hayes Corporation headquarters was alive with chatter that afternoon. The annual board meeting had just ended, and the building pulsed with the hum of executives, assistants, and staff rushing in and out. I walked through the gleaming lobby with my head held high, dressed in a tailored cream suit that radiated authority. People parted when they saw me. Mrs. Hayes was not someone to be trifled with, especially after the yacht incident. But power in a corporate empire was a fragile thing. Respect could shift with whispers. And I could feel those whispers growing sharper with every passing day. It started with a text from Clara. "Something's happening. Meet me on the 10th floor near the storage wing." The words sent a strange chill down my spine. Clara wasn't prone to dramatics. I hurried upstairs, my heels clicking against the polished marble floors. By the time I reached the corridor, a crowd had gathered outside the storage rooms. Security guards were fumbling with the lock, executives muttering nervously. And Nathaniel was there, his usually composed face pale and frantic. "Jiao Jiao. It's me." His fists pounded against the steel door. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." The name froze me in place. Jiao Jiao. No one called Sophie that. No one except the ghost. "Serena." From behind the locked door came a weak, trembling voice. "Ashu, it's so dark. I can't breathe." My blood turned to ice. The nickname whispered through the crowd like poison. It wasn't just a name, it was Serena's name for him. The one no one else dared use. Nathaniel pressed his forehead against the door, his voice breaking. "I'm here, Jiao Jiao. Hold on. I won't let anything happen to you." The lock screeched as the maintenance team tried and failed to open it. Sweat poured down their faces under Nathaniel's glare. "What the hell are we paying you for? Open it now." Finally, with a crack, the door swung wide. And there she was. Sophie Lynn collapsed into Nathaniel's arms, her face pale, her lips trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks. She clung to him like he was her lifeline. "I was so scared," she whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "I know Mrs. Hayes doesn't like me, but to lock me here knowing I'm claustrophobic." Gasps filled the hallway. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. I stepped forward, my voice sharp. "Excuse me." Sophie flinched against Nathaniel's chest, looking up at him with wide, tear-brimmed eyes. "She hates me. She must have told someone too." Her voice broke as if the words were too painful to say. The implication was clear. A murmur spread through the crowd. Executives exchanged glances. Assistants whispered behind their hands. The air shifted, doubt, suspicion, scandal hanging thick. And then the killing blow. Sophie looked up at Nathaniel with trembling lips and whispered, "Why, Amelia? You know I have claustrophobia." The world tilted. Claustrophobia? She'd never mentioned it before. It was too convenient, too perfectly timed. I opened my mouth to protest, but Nathaniel's hand shot up, not to stop Sophie. To stop me. His gray eyes were blazing, unrecognizable. And before I could even register it, his hand struck across my face. The crack echoed in the hallway. Silence. The sting burned into my cheek, spreading like fire. My vision blurred, not from tears but from sheer shock. Around us the employees froze, eyes wide. Claire gasped audibly. Nathaniel stood over me, his chest heaving, his arms still raised. "How could I have been so blind?" he spat. "To marry a venomous woman like you?" Sophie whimpered in his arms, pressing herself deeper into his chest, and I saw it. The faintest curl of a smile tugging at her lips. The crowd's whispers grew louder. Did she really lock her in there? Mrs. Hayes slapped by Mr. Hayes. This is going to be everywhere by tomorrow. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I simply stood there, the sting on my cheek radiating like a brand, the weight of betrayal pressing into my chest. But inside something shifted. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. It wasn't even rage. It was clarity. Nathaniel Hayes had slapped me in front of his company, defended another woman in front of his employees, humiliated me for all the world to see. And Sophie Lynn, Serena Blackwell in disguise, had orchestrated the perfect trap. But she had made one mistake. He thought I would break. Clara pushed through the crowd and grabbed my hand, her eyes blazing with fury. "Amelia." I squeezed her hand back, cutting her off. My gaze was locked on Sophie, who was nestled against Nathaniel, playing the victim. My lips curled into a cold, deliberate smile. Let them laugh now. Let them whisper. Because when I strike back, it will be with evidence, with precision. And I will make them both regret ever crossing me. I turned without a word, my heels clicking against the marble as I strode away. The whispers followed me, but I didn't care. My cheek burned, my pride stung, but my mind was already racing. Nathaniel thought he had protected his white moonlight. Sophie thought she had won the game. But they had forgotten who I was. I wasn't the girl who would cry in silence. I was Amelia Carter. And from this moment on, I wasn't fighting for my marriage. I was fighting for war. The sting of Nathaniel's hand lingered long after the redness on my cheek began to fade. It wasn't just skin that burned, it was dignity. I could have covered it with makeup, concealed it beneath powder and foundation. But I didn't. I wanted the world to see. When I stepped into my family's estate that evening, the opulence of the Carter home felt more like a fortress than ever. Crystal chandeliers glittered above, the scent of my mother's jasmine perfume drifted faintly, and the echo of my heels against marble floors announced me before I spoke a word. My father, Richard Carter, rose the instant he saw me. His sharp businessman's gaze softened, then hardened again when he noticed the swelling on my face. "Amelia," he said, his voice low and trembling with rage. "Who did this?" My brothers, Daniel, the eldest, and Marcus, the fiery youngest, shot up from the leather couches at once. "Was it Hayes?" Daniel's voice was steel. "I'll kill him." Marcus was already rolling up his sleeves. Mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "My child, what did that man do to you?" I stood silently for a moment, letting them drink in the mark, the silence stretching. Then I smiled faintly, though it was laced with venom. Yes, it was Nathaniel. The room erupted. Phones rang. Calls were made. Within minutes, uncles, cousins, Even elders who usually remained cloistered appeared in the Carter mansion. Over a dozen luxury cars lined the driveway. Inside, the air pulsed with anger. He dared to strike a Carter daughter? After all our family has done for them? The Hayes family must have lost their minds. My father slammed a hand against the table, his voice booming. We gave them loyalty. We gave them protection. And this is how they repay us. By humiliating my daughter in public. Mother's eyes glistened with tears, but her voice was sharp. That boy has been bewitched by that secretary. I've seen women like her before, ambitious, shameless. He'll bring ruin to his family if this continues. I let the storm brew around me, my silence deliberate. When the noise reached its peak, I finally raised a hand. Enough. The room fell quiet. I don't want empty anger, I said, my voice firm. I want action. If the Hayes family cannot control Nathaniel, then we will remind them of the cost of betrayal. That night, our Carter convoy descended upon the Hayes family estate. A dozen sleek black cars pulling into their circular drive, headlights cutting through the night. Servants scattered. Neighbors peeked from windows. The doors of the mansion burst open and Nathaniel's mother, Evelyn Hayes, hurried out. She froze when she saw me, then gasped at my swollen cheek. Amelia. What happened? Before I could answer, my father roared, Where is your son? Tell that bastard to come out here now. Evelyn's face went pale. Please calm yourselves. Calm. Marcus snapped. Your precious son struck our sister in front of his entire company. Calm left the moment he laid a hand on her. The commotion drew out Nathaniel's father, Charles Hayes. His stern face softened when he saw me, his brows furrowing. Amelia, tell me this isn't true. I didn't need to. My father pulled out his phone and played the footage. Clara had recorded everything. Nathaniel cradling Sophie, Sophie's crocodile tears, and then the slap that silenced the room. Evelyn's hands flew to her mouth. Charles's face darkened like a storm. You disgraceful boy, he muttered before dialing his phone. Get home. No. Or don't bother calling yourself a Hayes again. Half an hour later, Nathaniel arrived, and to my bitter amusement he brought Sophie with him. She hovered behind him, pale and trembling, the perfect picture of fragile innocence. The moment she stepped into the living room, my mother-in-law's composure cracked. Evelyn rounded on her. You dare to show your face here? After all the trouble you've caused. Sophie's eyes filled with tears and she clung to Nathaniel's sleeve. I didn't mean for any of this. Enough. Charles's voice was thunder. Nathaniel, do you realize what you've done? Striking your wife? In public? Defending a secretary against the Carter family. Nathaniel's jaw clenched, but he pulled Sophie protectively closer. Don't blame her. This is between me and Amelia. I laughed, low and cold. Between you and me? Then why is she always in the middle of us? Sophie flinched. Nathaniel's glare shot toward me, but I didn't flinch. The argument raged. My father accused Nathaniel of being bewitched. Charles demanded his son apologize. Evelyn wept. Sophie played the victim with artful sobs. And Nathaniel? He stood firm, his loyalty twisted toward Sophie. I won't apologize, he snapped finally. Amelia pushed this too far. Sophie is the victim here. I won't let her be slandered. The room fell into stunned silence. I studied his face, and for the first time I saw him clearly, not as the man I married, not as the husband I had tried to respect, but as a fool. A fool clinging to a ghost shadow. Very well. Let him. That night, back in the Carter estate, Clara slipped into my study. She dropped a folder onto my desk. I dug into Sophie Lynn. Her voice was sharp, her eyes gleaming. And you're right, things don't add up. Her degree papers are forged. Her records only begin 2 years ago. And Amelia. She leaned forward, tapping a photo pulled from the file. She had plastic surgery. Major work. Enough to change her face. I stared at the photo, a younger Sophie, different but eerily familiar. My stomach tightened. Serena. The ghost was no ghost at all. She had clawed her way back into Nathaniel's life, wearing a new mask. Clara's lips curled into a grim smile. Shall we tear it off? I closed the folder slowly, my fingers steady. Not yet, I said. Let her bask in her false triumph a little longer. The higher she climbs, the harder she'll fall. I rose, moving toward the window. The night outside was dark, the city skyline glittering like shards of glass. My reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar. Not the Amelia Carter who had once believed in quiet dignity, but a woman sharpened by betrayal. "War it is then," I whispered. And in that moment I knew. Nathaniel and Sophie had written their own ruin. All I had to do was light the match. The evidence came together piece by piece like shards of glass forming a weapon. For weeks, Clara and I had followed the threads. Forged documents, inconsistencies in Sophie Lynn's timeline, whispers from contacts abroad. Each detail painted a clearer picture. Sophie wasn't Sophie at all. She was Serena Blackwell. The ghost Nathaniel had mourned, the woman who had once been his first love, wasn't dead. She had faked her death, taken money from the Hayes family, and lived recklessly overseas until her fortune dried up. Then, with a new face carved by scalpels and surgeons, she had returned to steal her way back into his life. And Nathaniel had fallen for it, blindly, pathetically. It was almost poetic. The annual Hayes Foundation Charity Gala was the perfect stage. Every elite family would be present, every eye fixed on the hosts. I arrived dressed in crimson silk, a gown that flowed like liquid fire, my presence undeniable. Clara shadowed me like a hawk, clutching a small black envelope. Nathaniel stood at the center of the ballroom, handsome in his tuxedo, Sophie on his arm in a delicate ivory dress that mimicked bridal purity. She wore the Hayes heirloom ring still, flaunting it like a trophy. The crowd buzzed around them. "Is that the secretary? She's bold, I'll give her that. Mrs. Hayes hasn't made a scene yet?" I smiled coldly. They didn't know. Not yet. When the music faded, I stepped onto the stage, seizing the microphone before Nathaniel could give his rehearsed speech. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying with crisp clarity, "thank you for gathering tonight. Before the evening continues, allow me to share a story." The ballroom hushed. "There was once a young woman," I began, pacing slowly, "who loved money more than loyalty. She took 50 million from a grieving family to disappear, to fake her own death. She betrayed the man who loved her, then squandered it all abroad, drowning in scandals until she was left with nothing. And then—" I paused, letting the silence thicken. "She returned. With a new face. A new name. But the same ambition." I raised my hand. Clara strode forward, handing me the envelope. With deliberate calm, I pulled out the photographs and documents inside. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice sharp as a blade, "meet Serena Blackwell, also known as Sophie Lynn." The screen behind me lit up with the images. The old photos of Serena, her medical records from Korea, her forged documents. And finally, the damning evidence. Scandalous photos of her partying abroad, wrapped around men in nightclubs, the kind of images no amount of denial could erase. The ballroom erupted. Gasps. Shouts. Laughter. "Oh my God. She's Serena? She faked her death?" Sophie, Serena, staggered back, her face draining of color. "No, that's not true, Nathaniel, believe me." Nathaniel's face was ashen, his body rigid. His eyes darted between the screen and the woman clinging to his sleeve. "Tell me it's not true," he whispered. Serena sobbed, shaking her head furiously. "They're lying. She's framing me. You know me, Ashu, you know me." But the slip of the nickname sealed it. Gasps rippled again as the crowd caught it. Ashu, the private name no one but Serena had ever known. I stepped closer, my smile razor sharp. "Funny. Sophie Lynn shouldn't know that name. But Serena Blackwell does." Serena froze, the truth hanging heavy in the air. Nathaniel's mask shattered. He ripped his arm away from Serena, his voice breaking. "It's really you. All this time." He turned on me, his eyes wild. "Amelia, why didn't you?" "Why didn't I what?" I cut in coldly. "Tell you the truth sooner? You wouldn't have believed me. You never do." I lifted my chin. "But don't worry, Nathaniel. I've already taken the liberty of filing the divorce papers. By the time the dust settles, the Hayes family name will belong to my children, not your mistress." The word children hit like thunder. Gasps again. Evelyn Hayes, my mother-in-law, stepped forward, eyes wide. "Children." I smiled faintly. "Twins. Due in 6 months." The room exploded into fresh chaos. The Hayes elders, who had once tolerated Nathaniel's arrogance, immediately turned their fury on him. "You fool!" Charles Hayes thundered. "You slapped your wife in public for this fraud? Amelia carries the heirs to our family name, and you humiliate her for a liar? You've shamed us all." Evelyn was weeping openly, clutching my hands. "Amelia, forgive us. Forgive our son's stupidity. You are the true Mrs. Hayes." "Sophie," Serena shrieked, her voice high and desperate. "No. He loves me. He's always loved me. Amelia tricked you all." Security closed in. The elders barked orders. Serena was dragged out, her screams echoing through the ballroom. Nathaniel stood alone, pale and broken. His hands trembled as he reached toward me. "Amelia, I didn't know. Please, please don't do this. We can still fix." I stepped back, my eyes icy. "Fix what? The humiliation? The betrayal? The slap you gave me in front of your company? Or the fact that you'd throw away your wife and children for a ghost?" He flinched as though struck. I leaned in, my voice low enough for only him to hear. "I'll raise our children with pride. They'll inherit both families' legacies. But you, Nathaniel, you'll inherit nothing but regret." I turned, leaving him behind in the ruins of his own making. Outside the ballroom, the night air was cool, crisp, liberating. Clara fell into step beside me, her grin wicked. "You've just burned Sophie, Serena, to ashes." I exhaled slowly, the weight lifting from my chest. Good. Now Nathaniel can join her in the flames of his own ruin. Behind me, the shouts and chaos continued, but I didn't look back. For the first time in years, I walked away not as Amelia Carter Hayes, the dutiful wife, but as Amelia Carter, a woman reborn. The divorce papers were signed 3 weeks after the gala. It wasn't a quiet affair. The press swarmed outside the courthouse, cameras flashing, headlines already written. "Mrs. Hayes walks away with twins. Carter heiress ends scandalous marriage. Hayes heir cast aside as wife secures legacy." I didn't flinch beneath the cameras. I walked out of that building in a navy-tailored dress, my head high, my hands resting gently over my stomach. The twins. My children. My future. Behind me, Nathaniel stumbled after, his face hollow, his once pristine suit wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. "Amelia," he rasped, reaching for me. "Don't do this. Please. I was blind. I see it all now. Give me another chance." I turned, the cameras drinking in every second. My voice carried, steady and cold. "Once betrayed, Nathaniel, never trusted again. You made your choice. Now you can live with it." The reporters gasped, pens scribbling furiously, shutters snapping like thunder. And then I walked away, leaving him behind. Months later, the Carter estate rang with laughter. My twins, a boy and a girl, were born healthy, their cries echoing like a new beginning. My father wept openly the first time he held them, pressing a kiss to his grandson's forehead. My mother hovered constantly, spoiling them with silk blankets and gold bangles. My brothers competed to see who could make them giggle louder. For the Carters, the twins weren't just children. They were heirs, the continuation of our bloodline and legacy. Even the Hayes elders, humbled by Nathaniel's disgrace, bent over backwards to ensure the children were acknowledged as rightful heirs. "We've already transferred a large portion of the Hayes assets into trusts for them," Charles Hayes said solemnly one afternoon, his once proud tone tinged with regret. "They will want for nothing." I accepted with a polite nod. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about victory. As for Serena, Sophie, whatever name she tried to wear, she was finished. The internet never forgot. The revelation of her faked death, the photos of her scandalous life abroad, and the footage of her being dragged out of the gala destroyed her completely. No company dared hire her. No family would associate with her. Rumor said she begged Nathaniel to take her back, but he slammed the door in her face, calling her the greatest mistake of his life. Others whispered she tried to start fresh overseas again, but doors closed wherever she went. In the end, she became nothing more than a cautionary tale, the woman who tried to cheat death only to die socially instead. Nathaniel's downfall was slower, more tragic. The Hayes board forced him out. His parents, ashamed, stripped him of authority and confined him to the shadows of the company. His once pristine reputation as a decisive CEO was reduced to whispers of the man who slapped his wife for a mistress. He tried at first to reach me. Calls. Letters. even waiting outside the Carter estate begging to see me to see the twins. One evening, Clara found him standing in the rain at the gates, drenched, his eyes wild. "She won't even let me explain," he muttered. "I got a vasectomy. Don't you see? I only wanted her children, no one else's." But when the guards moved to escort him out, he broke down, sobbing into his hands. I watched from my window. I didn't move. Not once. Because I had already given him his chance. And he had shattered it with his own hand. The months passed. I poured my energy into raising my children, into expanding the Carter business empire, into becoming more than just the woman scorned. At charity events, people no longer whispered about the slap or the mistress or the divorce. They whispered about Amelia Carter, the woman who had turned betrayal into power, who had crushed her enemies and walked away with everything. I carried my twins into ballrooms, their small hands curled around my fingers, and watched the once arrogant society bow their heads in respect. Clara teased me once, saying, "You've become a legend, Amelia. The woman no man dares cross." I only smiled. Because legends weren't born from love. They were born from fire. It wasn't until nearly 2 years later that I saw Nathaniel again at a public gala. He looked older, thinner, his eyes carrying the weight of endless regret. He tried to approach me, his lips parting to speak. But before he could, my son tugged at my hand and my daughter giggled in my arms. Nathaniel froze, his eyes glassy, his voice breaking. "They look just like you." I met his gaze one last time. "Yes. And they will never know betrayal." And then I turned away, my children in my arms, the crowd parting for me as though I were royalty. On quiet nights, when the twins slept peacefully and the world was still, I would stand by my window and breathe deeply. The storm was over. I had been betrayed, humiliated, broken open. But I had risen stronger than ever. Nathaniel and Serena had destroyed themselves with their choices. Me, I had built a new era. One where my children thrived, where my legacy endured, and where my name stood untarnished. Because in the end, betrayal does not destroy the strong. It only forges them sharper. The end.